Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me that you built a time machine out of a DeLorean?
The way I see it, if you're gonna build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style? Besides, the stainless steel construction made the flux dispersal. Look out!
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where each week we enter the world of a great film. My headphones were falling off, and that's why I started laughing. And I think we explore its themes, its history, the filmmaking, and the influence it has on us today. My name, I believe, is Steve Morris, and I think I'm a filmmaker and a directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
I am John Rook. I'm a voiceover, definitely a voiceover artist, writer, producer, and host at Collider Video. And on the Top 10 show. And I'm looking forward to this one because this film lost me a belt when I was going for the title in a triple threat match. A question from this damn movie lost me the belt.
What was the question?
What brand of underwear does
Calvin Klein?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I forgot because I hadn't seen it in a while and I totally forgot and I said Fruit of the Loom. Because I just didn't know.
It'd be interesting if Mom calls him Fruit.
How are you feeling, Fruit? Why do you keep calling me that?
Oh.
This is very homophobic, Mom.
Oh, wow.
So you might have noticed that there are two other voices with us, and we are welcoming back to the Cine-Files two of our all-time favorite guests, animation writer and producer Michael Vogel, animation writer and actor Shannon McClung. Welcome back to the Cine-Files.
Hey, thank you, Steve.
You are very welcome. And the movie we're talking about, we've already heard one trivia question from, is Back to the Future. That song, that music has been going through my head for the last 48 hours.
Hashtag same.
And not only is it one of our favorite movies, but it's also one of the favorite films of our patrons, with not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 Cine-Files patrons have picked this. And those folks are James Kang, Jonathan Peck, Matt Correa, Patrick Giomo, and Sean Higgins. So let's hear why they picked the film.
Hey, John and Steve. Back to the Future is one of my favorite movies of all time because it was one of the first movies I ever saw that blended humor, science fiction, and fantasy and adventure all into one incredible 2-hour story. You had a crazy doctor you wanted to hang out with, a great family origin story in the McFlys, and come on, a time machine in the form of a DeLorean, and the cliffhanger that left me wanting more. And of course, John, remember, Calvin Klein's will always be better than Fruit of the Looms. Thanks again for your incredible podcast and look forward to hearing you break down this incredible film.
Hello, John and Steve. This is Jonathan Peck from Alexandria, Virginia. And thank you for choosing my pick for this episode of the Cine-Files is Back to the Future. It made me influence myself to make movies in the first place and make me want to become a filmmaker someday.
Hi, John and Steve. Sean from Minneapolis, Minnesota here. Excited to hear you guys talk about Back to the Future. Not only is this a childhood film of mine, one I probably watched easily about 50 times, but it's a film that has remained one of my all-time favorites into adulthood. This is due to the wonderful characters of Marty and Doc Brown, the incredible cast, the direction by Robert Zemeckis, and of course, the screenplay. This was one of the first films to teach me about basic screenwriting, about setup and payoff, and building tension. It also is one of the films to really influence my love of 80s films. It's a perfect blend of adventure, comedy, suspense, and of course, sci-fi. Great Scott, I can't wait to hear you guys talk about this masterpiece.
I'm so excited to talk about this. We've handled a lot of heavy movies lately. We've dealt with some heavy issues, and I'm so happy to go back to the future right now. This is one of my favorite films. John, do you remember how you first came to it?
Yeah, I'm saw it in theaters with my family, I'm sure. We all went together to see back when you could go with your family. Like, I was right at that edge where I was sliding out of, like, going to films with my family and being a teenager going with my friends. I was at that age. I remember this being one of the last few films that I went to see in the theater with my family and enjoyed thoroughly as a family and talked about it so much afterwards. But I will say this, I will admit this, it has never had the hook in me that it has had with other people, but I've always loved the film and appreciated the series. But it's never been like one that I go, oh, I got to put on it. Whenever I'm flipping channels, I got to watch it. It's never been one of those for me, even though I love the film thoroughly.
Right. Michael, do you remember how you first came to it?
I do. I am much younger than John Rocco.
Oh, boy.
So I
Wait,
was
that means you're
very
even much younger than me.
I am.
Um,
But I was at that age where you were still going to the movies with your parents, and I think I was like, I mean, if it's 80, 85, I was 8 years old.
Sure.
Yes, you were 8.
I was 8 years old.
He's doing math on his
You were
fingers.
7.
I literally had to count.
It came out in July. Your birthday's in December, so you were probably 7.
That's so sweet that you know my birthday.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I was 7 years old. But so I was at that exact like that was it was right there in the thick of those movies in the 80s that your parents took you to that like defined an entire generation of us. So it definitely got the hook in me. I remember seeing it in the movie theater, and it just blew me away. I was all about it.
Mr. McClung.
Yes, I'm even younger than Mike.
I mean, I like
Wait,
fun.
but that means you're younger than John. That means you're even younger than me.
I know. 77, 78. So months, but really a year on paper. Anywho.
It's funny because I'm the youngest looking guy in the room. But go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
Pump
I'm
the
just saying.
brakes. So yes, I actually went and saw it with my friend's family, with my friend Lloyd Haid. That was the first time I went and saw a movie with someone else's family.
Is this the same guy that made you watch Terminator?
Terminator? Yeah, same family.
At 6 years old?
Yes.
Wow.
We went and saw. So normally I was used to going with my mom and dad, and you guys have met my parents. I was raised in a very prim and proper household. My mom is sugary sweet. My dad doesn't say much. So we sit down in the movie theater, and Mr. Haight leans over and he goes, he's like, "No, I don't want to hear any talking. I'm serious. You guys better shut up. This is going to be a good movie." And I'm thinking, I've never had an adult speak to me like this. So I sat there petrified for the first hour of the movie.
Did you enjoy it?
Once I got past the petrification word,
Like, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, as the oldest person here, this has been clearly established. It was the summer after my junior year in high school, and I went to see it with a bunch of friends, and then we went to see it again. I think I saw it 3 or 4 times in the theater, rented it over and over and over again. Watched it just a ton. Yeah. Talk a little bit about pre-production. It started when Bob Gale, who's Bob Zemeckis' partner, so we got the 2 Bobs, went back to a high school reunion, and as he was at his folks' house, he found his dad's old yearbook from high school and saw that his dad was senior class president. And he had no idea that his dad had been senior class president. He went, "Man, I wonder if I would be friends with my dad if we were in high school together." He goes back to Bob Zemeckis and just says this idea, and Zemeckis goes, "It would be really interesting. What if mom was saying all these prim and proper things, and then you go back to high school and see her, and she's nothing like that?" And that is the origin of the movie Back to the Future. And they go in and pitch it. And by the way, the reason it's set in 1955 is just mathematical, because that's the right age from 1985. But when they started, it's 1980, 1981. They pitch it at Columbia, they sell it in the room. And Columbia says, "Go write it." It takes 6 months to write because they have a process that is the way collaboration is supposed to work, which is that they argued a lot. And they didn't argue to win, and they didn't argue to get mad. They argued because both of them passionately wanted to make the best script that possible. And they kept saying, "Not good enough. That your idea is okay. It's not good enough. We have to make more." And one of the things they did, which I think a lot of different ways to write a screenplay, one of the ways that I don't do is writing everything down on an index card and putting it on a big board. This is an index card movie because every thought they have is they go, "Marty invents rock and roll." Put that on an index card, put it on the board. If Marty invents rock and roll, we must see him play rock and roll. Put that on an index card. Marty invents skateboarding. Put that on an index card. If he invents skateboarding, we must see him skateboard. And so this whole movie movie has more plans and payoffs than any other movie I can think of. There's so many little details, and you can see when you think about it, every single index card, we have to get that in before that. Well, if that happens, then we have to move this. And that was a lot of those 6 months of trying to write the screenplay. Write the screenplay in 6 months, 5 weeks rewrite. Columbia didn't want to make it. It goes into turnaround because what does Columbia want to make? They're like, well, it's a comedy. Comedy in the early 80s need to be raunchy.
Right.
Meatballs,
Porkies, Stripes. Yeah. This is something we talked about when we did Breakfast Club, is that he got all this pressure from 16 Candles and then later Breakfast Club to make it raunchy, so that no one wanted to do it. The only person who really liked it was Steven Spielberg. And Zemeckis and Gale had written, which I totally forgot, 1941.
Oh, a terrible movie.
And then Spielberg produced their first 2 movies, which is Used Cars and I Want to Hold Your Hand. all bombs.
But still, Used Cars is
I have no memory of it. I
really
think I saw
Kurt
it.
Russell. It is a what do they call it? Is an underground favorite. It's a guilty pleasure. A lot of people love Kurt Russell in Used Cars. Very funny film, in my opinion.
Well, and so they literally said no to Spielberg.
I want to say one last thing. I'm sorry, Steve.
Yeah.
I Want to Hold Your Hand is getting a Criterion release
Really?
later this year,
Fascinating.
which is about these people going to see their first Beatles concert ever and
wow.
what that must have been like. So how interesting, another film going back in time.
Interesting,
Yeah.
indeed. Well, 1941 is a period piece. So,
Right.
well, and so they literally go to Spielberg like, look, we're glad you like our movie. We don't want to make it with you because we don't want to look like we've done 3 things that weren't successful with you. We don't want to look like the only reason anyone lets us make movies is that you're our friend. And Spielberg goes, okay. And so they shop it around. No one wants it. Someone says, take it to Disney. They take it to Disney. Disney looks at them like, this is a movie about incest. You want Disney to do it? So finally, after 3 years, they go back to Spielberg, and he says, yeah, I said I'd do it a while ago. And it becomes the first actual Amblin production at Universal that was not directed by Steven Spielberg.
Wow.
Everyone came in to audition for Marty, and the person that they wanted was Michael J. Fox, which I never knew. I didn't know they wanted him from the beginning. And they went to Gary David Goldberg, who's the producer of Family Ties, which is a hit TV show, and he says, nope, can't have him. So then they go off to their second choice, which is Eric Stoltz.
Yep.
And they went and started shooting with him. And they shot for 5 weeks with Eric Stoltz. And it was funny, they're looking at the footage and they go, man, Eric Stoltz is a great actor. This is a serious movie.
Yeah.
He just didn't have the comedy chops.
Did you hear the table read story? Like
No.
their first table read?
No.
Allegedly, what had happened, I think Bob Gale said it in an interview, but after their first table read, some assistant had gone up to Eric Stoltz and was saying, hey, this movie is going to be really great. It's going to be really, really funny. And he goes, oh, I don't think this is going to be funny at all.
Oh,
this
really?
This is tragic. He's going to go back to a life that didn't exist. And that was his...
That was in his head.
That was his way in, yeah.
Well, Stoltz is not really known for comedies.
No.
So, I mean, it's like, even in Pulp Fiction, his comedy is like really dark. The sequence that occurs with him in Pulp is very dark comedy. So it makes it, and that footage exists. You can find it on YouTube. Watch Eric Stoltz as Marty McFly. It's a dark movie.
It's so this just points out the thing of like why casting is hard. You know what I mean? Like the idea, people think like, oh, well, they'll just, whoever the best actor is, we'll give it to the best actor. It's like, no, that's not what casting is. Right. Casting is finding the right actor. Eric Stoltz is a really good actor. And Zemeckis goes to Spielberg and he sits him down in the screening room and screens a bunch of stuff. And there's then silence in the theater. And Spielberg looks over at him, goes like, well, what do you want to do? And he goes, and Zemeckis goes, I think we need to replace Eric Stoltz. And Spielberg goes, I think so too. Huh. And then they have to go to Sid Sheinberg, who's the head of the studio, very, very powerful guy in Hollywood, and say, we want to essentially throw out 5 weeks of work and cast this guy, and we want to get Michael J. Fox. They go back to Gary David Goldberg, and he says, nope. And I get it. I mean, I get it. It's like he has a hit show on TV. Mm-hmm. Michael J. Fox is the breakout character of his hit show. He's not going to hand him over to a movie. Mm. And so they come up with a deal of he's going to shoot Family Ties during the day and at night go and shoot Back to the Future all night and Back to Family Ties in the day.
Jeez. Lord.
And they had, and John, you will appreciate this story. Yeah. They had a station wagon with a mattress in the back. Huh. Who's that make you think of?
Orson Welles.
Orson Welles riding around in the ambulance to get between radio shows and plays.
Yep.
Crazy.
Back in the 40s.
I had no idea. I had for everything that I knew, man. I knew about Eric Stoltz. I know this other stuff. I had no idea about this at all. This is amazing.
10 to 5 shoot from Family Ties, then get to the set at maybe 7 or 8, and then shoot until 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning, and then back to Family Ties. Wait, what's the theme song from Family Ties?
What would we do, baby?
I'm just picturing Meredith Baxter and Michael J. Fox not speaking to each other.
Like on separate, you know.
And I don't know what the words are.
And there ain't no nothing we can't get each other through.
I liked my version. It was more internal. It was more internal.
The Muppet version.
By the way, I love that show. I watched it all the time.
That show was a great show. Way better than Growing Pains. You can kiss. That's the thing. It's either Red Vines or Twizzlers. It's either Family Ties or Growing Pains.
Family Ties is better than Growing Pains.
It's miles better than Growing Pains.
They don't.
I feel like I
wish this was a video. This is expression from Michael Vogel.
Okay, but Growing Pains has the better theme song.
What is the Growing Pains theme?
Show me that smile again. Show me that smile. Don't waste another minute on your crying.
All right,
By the way,
fair.
I barely watch Growing Pains because, as we've established, I'm a little older. But that's a better theme song.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But not as good as Perfect Strangers.
No, Perfect Strangers is the best theme.
That is the
That's the best theme song
For sure.
from the 80s,
Absolutely.
period.
Gentlemen.
Yeah.
Standing tall on the wings of my dreams, rise and fall on the wings of my dreams. And then best part, through rain and thunder, wind and haze, I'm bound for better days.
My life. Nothing's gonna stop me now.
The audio might have peaked a little bit
Oh,
in
that's
some of
fine.
that.
Sorry.
I just
Sorry,
didn't have
guys.
my hand on the.
Sorry, guys.
Silver
No, it's-
Spoons is number 2, maybe? I don't know.
If you've never played the theme to Perfect Strangers during New Year's Eve, when the fireworks are going off, it really syncs up.
Pro tip, my friends. Pro tip. Shall we jump into the film?
Yes, please.
So we enter into the sound of clocks.
Seems appropriate.
Originally, this movie was supposed to open in a classroom.
Oh.
And the reason it was supposed to open in a classroom is that the climax was supposed to be the explosion of a hydrogen bomb at a nuclear test facility, because only that would generate the 1.21 gigawatts to power the time machine. And so we had to establish in a history class that this nuclear test happened nearby this town.
That's fascinating. I always do love this whole thing. Like when you see something that's so perfect, the way that I feel like Back to the Future is, where you hear the earlier versions and you go, yeah, that tracks. Like that makes sense. Like it is a very like, we're going to open in the classroom because we need to get this information out really quickly and really clearly so that the audience knows this later. Like you were saying, like the whole note card thing.
Yeah.
And they do the same thing in the opening of this movie once we get into Hill Valley, but in a different way with what ultimately they figured out, which is way cooler.
Way cooler. And part of the reason they didn't do the nuclear test, because Spielberg loved the whole nuclear test, was money. It was just way too expensive. They wanted to do something to do in the back lot. And I couldn't confirm this, but it cost $3 million additional dollars to switch to Michael J. Fox on a $14 million budget. Wow. That was so $3 million in today's movie money standards doesn't sound like a lot of money. But if your total budget is 14, you have to go back to the studio for an extra 3. And I don't know if that's when they cut the nuclear test or not. I'm not sure. But they did cut it, and that's why we open up with these clocks. This is one of those things where people do not understand how hard movie making is. Try to get 20 clocks all to click in sync. They had like 20 guys, one on each clock, lining them up after every single take to get them to all be on the same time, because those pendulums are swinging in sync.
Yeah.
Like that is really, really hard as we go by these clocks and we see pictures of Edison, Einstein, and Ben Franklin, and we see a newspaper article saying that the Brown Mansion was destroyed. This is all really important setups for things. By the way, we also see that Judy Taylor did the casting, one of the great casting directors of all time. We hear about a Toyota sale. Everything that is in this movie is important. Like there's nothing really wasted as we go by.
I mean, in the opening like 10 minutes, and like I said, when we get into them in Hill Valley and him in school and everything, like I was thinking of this when I was rewatching it, that just like there's something amazing about, like as a writer, I do not have economy of storytelling. I constantly overwrite everything and write way too long. And so watching something like this, you're just like, every single thing, whether it be a visual cue or just a mention here, it's all brought up, it's all set up for you, and it's all done in the quickest, shortest,
really fast,
most like it's like strategic way possible, and it's amazing.
We go back a coffee maker that pours water into a hot thing, but there's no pot. We go by a toaster that's burning. We're in kind of this Rube Goldberg-y sort of invention contraption. Then we go to this robotic arm that grabs a can of dog food, opens it up, and pours it really disgustingly into a bowl. Again, so they really did build a robotic arm and an automatic dog food can opener. And when they practiced it out, it worked perfectly. And then they didn't get the rights to the dog food that they had been using to put on camera. They got rights to other dog food for product placement, and when they did it didn't work. The dog food stayed in the can. And so there is a dude just off screen with a blowtorch heating up the can of dog food right before the camera gets to it so that it's hot, so when it flips over it pours out. Again, filmmaking is weird.
I want to meet this guy in a bar in Hollywood today. Like, I used to work in Hollywood. What did you do? Let me tell you, you seen Back to the Future? Yes. I made that dog food.
And then we see the door open, and we see feet, and they're putting like a key under the mat, and in comes some legs with a skateboard. Not Michael J. Fox. Because he's only working half days. Anything they could shoot that wasn't him, they did. So this is another guy, and we see him kind of kick the skateboard across the room, which stops by hitting the box of plutonium, which we have heard on a news report that I didn't mention, that some plutonium has been stolen possibly by some Libyan terrorists. So as you say, there's a lot of info right in this shot. And then we go to him, this guy flipping some switches, turning some knobs. We hear the hum of a powerful something or other. We don't know what he's doing. We see these meters starting to peak. He's turning everything up, turning on the overdrive, and then we see him plug something in, and we're in a shot behind him, and we see the world's biggest speaker, and he strums his guitar, and what happens to him?
I mean, massive explosion. Massive explosion.
It's not
so great.
It's not a plutonium explosion, but it's an explosion.
Plutonium. Plutonium.
Do we think that the shot from behind, would that not have been Michael J. Fox?
It was not.
Wow. That's crazy.
I'm fairly certain it's not. The first shot of actual Michael J. Fox is when he drags himself out of the debris and says, "Rock and roll," as opposed to like, "I'm deaf," right. Which probably is more likely what would have happened.
That's what it's like when you're 15.
Yeah, everything's rock and roll.
Everything's rock and roll, son.
And then
or
he gets
16, however lose.
He gets a phone call, and it is from Doc Brown, and we hear
Marty.
And then this might be the silliest little setup, is that the clocks all bong 8 o'clock. And after Doc has asked him to meet him at 1:30 in the morning at the Twin Pines Mall, he says, Marty says that they're all 8 o'clock. He says, "Oh, it's perfect. They're exactly 25 minutes late."
It's funny because like I actually took a good several minutes to go,
huh?
What did he actually... Like, did he put them all in the DeLorean? No, he doesn't have enough plutonium. Like, I literally spent more time than I should have trying to figure out what experiment he did with all of those clocks to get them all behind. And I was like, okay, I'll give it to you, Doc Brown. You're smarter than me. But like, I couldn't, for the life of me, I was like, what could he have done?
I think that the two Bobs wanted Marty to be late for school, and they had to figure out how to do it.
Oh, fair.
And he is late for school, and we get our skateboarding montage.
Dun, dun,
And our
dun,
first
dun,
Huey Lewis song.
dun, dun,
Huey
which
Lewis,
was a staple.
Huey Lewis,
theme.
the unsung hero of Back to the Future.
Absolutely. Which was a staple of the 80s. You had to have a great soundtrack. You had to.
Absolutely. And
this has a great soundtrack.
It does. Of original music.
Yeah.
Original.
Power, love, curious thing.
Yeah, when you would have the music video that would have clips from the movie, or if you could even get the star.
You could get the star
as
as
the
video.
character. Yeah.
That was a big deal. And that music video was shot right near my house in a little club in Larkspur, I think, for Power of Love, because Huey Lewis is a Marin County guy from where I grew up.
Really?
I saw maybe my first ever star sighting is Huey Lewis in a bookstore when I was in high school. And that was, that was when he was Huey Lewis in the news. This is big time.
Huey Lewis in a bookstore sounds like a great improv game. Like, I need a person and a place. I will be doing Huey Lewis in a bookstore.
With an orangutan. And he goes off skateboarding through the town, holding on to the back of trucks. When this movie opened in Australia, Michael J. Fox had to do a public service announcement telling kids, don't hang on to the back of cars on skateboards.
Amazing.
Those are tough kids, those Australians. But this is also a very brilliant way to give you exposition about the town.
Exactly.
Just genius how they show you what everything is laid out, where he's going, what he's doing, and also give you a little hint into his character in that he's a bit of a rebel rouser. He's a bit of a rebel. He's a bit of a kind of, he's a normal kid who likes to break the rules just a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit.
And as you were saying, John, we see the town is messed up. And part of the way they do this, just in terms of efficiency in filmmaking, is they shot the 50s first. It's much easier to mess up a set than it is to clean up a set. Sure. So they made the pristine, and this is all, of course, on the Universal backlot, and you could see it on your Universal backlot tour. Ask for Shannon.
I don't work on the tours. Steve.
I know.
He's
Come
above
on, man.
the tour.
Come on.
He's above the tour.
So they made it perfect, pristine for the 50s, and then they messed it up. And you can see this is the era when the malls opened up and the downtowns got abandoned. And this is a rough town that he's going through. He arrives at school, runs into his girlfriend, Jennifer, which is Claudia Wells.
Well, runs into Jennifer before school.
Right.
And then you get the whole hill. Because, like, then important, because like, this is what you were talking about the classroom scene at the beginning, is the old lady who comes up with the Save the Clock Tower.
That's after school.
Is that after school?
Yeah. So he meets her, they go into school. So
Maybe don't try to drive every time. You know, just saying. Go ahead, Steve. As you were saying, Steve.
Maybe take that out.
Oh, yeah.
No, leave it in.
You know what?
Leave it in.
Yeah, leave it in. You know what? Leave it in.
I'll be leaving that in. So we run into Jennifer, who's played by Claudia Wells. Her story is really interesting.
Yeah.
She was cast first, and they wanted her to do it, and she had just booked a pilot, and they just heard the pilot wasn't going to go, and so she was going to shoot it, and she's going to do it with Eric Stoltz, and then the pilot went, and they got a 6 episode offer, so she had to pull out of the show. So they cast instead Melora Hardin to play the girlfriend.
Wow.
From The Office?
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
And she did the 5 weeks with Eric Stoltz, and then when they fire Eric Stoltz, she's taller. And so they went, this isn't going to look good with Michael J. Fox, who's 5'5". So they fired her as well. And by that time, the series had done its 6 episodes and did get canceled. And Claudia Wells was available, and she's not tall, and they brought her back.
God, I got to see that footage. I don't know if I've seen footage of her as Jennifer. Interesting.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
Yeah.
And that's sizest, because short guys can be with tall women.
Okay.
All right.
Can they?
All right.
It's not in Hollywood, son. Not on screen. But what's interesting, though, too, is her story, because she does get replaced anyway, again.
By Elizabeth
2 and 3,
Shue.
by Elizabeth Shue.
One of my favorites.
Absolutely, for so many reasons. She has her own, she runs now in L.A. a suit shop. The
Really?
actress, yes. They did a piece on her like a year or two ago, and she talked about her experiences being in what happened, and she was like, she's still bummed she got replaced in the series. But she took her a while to kind of walk away from acting, and now she runs a very successful suit shop in LA. You can go get your suit measured at Jennifer's store.
There you go.
Wow.
They go into the school and immediately get accosted by Mr. Strickland,
Yeah.
James Tolkien.
Who's the best?
I still just can't not think of him as the poor man's Robert Duvall.
Yeah.
Just always, he so has that exact same vocal rhythm.
He makes both Top Gun and Back to the Future. He's so important to both films. He really is.
And Masters of the Universe.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
He's in that as
Oh,
well.
man, he is.
He plays Detective Lubbock.
That might be my favorite role of his now. That's out of those 3, that's the winner.
And he is horrible, horrible person.
You've got a real attitude problem, McFly. You're a slacker. You remind me of your father when he went here. He was a slacker, too. Can I go now, Mr. Strickland? I notice your band is on the roster for the dance auditions after school today. Why even bother, McFly? You don't have a chance. You're too much like your old man. No McFly ever amounted to anything in the history of Hill Valley. Yeah, well, history is going to change.
What is a slacker? Because is it fair to call George McFly a slacker? Like,
Yes.
really?
What did you see that he was doing that was upwardly mobile or was going to help him in his
Clearly did
career?
good in school if Biff was
Yeah, he's
making
a
him
good
do his
student.
homework.
Right, but he's a slacker in the way that, like, he's a nerd, and that's what that was kind of the correlation. A slacker was someone who's not gonna
Nerds
be
are not
anybody.
slackers.
Okay, am I going to talk about the 50s or not? That's the 50s interpretation. Nerds were slackers, that kind of
I do
idea.
think that to him, Biff would have been a great student, and George
Yes.
McFly was a slacker.
Right.
Maybe.
That's
I
what
mean,
I'm saying.
a slacker is someone who doesn't work hard.
I'm not agreeing with his connotation. I'm trying to explain to you what he's coming from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you clearly have rare insight into James Tolkien.
Well, I have rare insight into the 50s.
No,
Method.
I this doesn't happen often, but I will agree with Roca on this one.
Such a liar.
But no, I do think that in terms of like the way the whole movie is set up, like Biff is successful and George McFly is not.
For high school.
But I'm saying no, even like
Well,
when we
in
meet
the
them, but when we
present
meet
day,
them in the
Biff is.
present
Oh,
day,
right.
Biff is successful
Right.
by building his life and his career and everything on making George do everything.
Right.
And George McFly is not successful. So in terms of the way they probably were perceived in high school,
call.
Probably
that
true.
led all the way to adulthood,
Yeah.
Biff is, hey, this is the kind of guy you want to be. I'm glad you went to my high school. Right. This Yutz, what a slacker. It makes sense.
You know what?
He never accomplished anything.
I'm totally swayed by this argument.
Yeah. That's what we're saying. He's a slacker.
Okay. Shall we go have our band audition?
Yes.
Oh, by the way, one last thing. This is how principals were in the 80s, kids. You guys got it lucky that you'd get your butts fondled by these principals now to make sure nothing happened.
Well,
Wait,
did
I say that wrong? Did that come out wrong? You guys are lucky. You guys are lucky that principals can't even touch you. In the old days, am I wrong on this? I feel like I'm trying to get my point.
Back in the old days, I got touched all the time by my principals.
His name was Michael Jackson. No, they used to spank us all the time and principals used to come in and make you feel like dog shit all the time. And the parents were okay with it. Back then, it wasn't, principals nowadays, they can barely say 2 words, cross words to you without like a shit ton of evidence and video.
When did you just become an angry old man?
When? Are you kidding? It's been about 10 years.
Oh, in my day, principals fondled my butt and kicked me out on the street.
That was because they didn't want me to be a slacker.
So the audition, Huey Lewis is in it.
Yes,
everyone.
This was like the big, like, if you could, like as Shannon was saying, in the 80s, if you could get one of the stars in your music video,
yes,
and you could get a part in the movie, that's like, you're winning big time.
And he was nervous about this. Did you know this?
Huey Lewis? No,
yeah,
no.
he was nervous about it because he was just like, you're playing me as this nerd. I'm the cool rock guy. Like this could ruin my image.
Of Huey Lewis?
Yes. We're talking 85 right now, man.
They were a fucking bar band. What are you talking about? Oh, I love it. So good. This is not freaking Motley Crue. It's Huey Lewis.
You don't tell Huey that.
Yeah, oh, sure. I want a new drug.
By the way,
a slacker.
Did you listen to the Mark Maron a long time ago did an interview with Huey Lewis?
Yes. It's a great episode.
His life is totally fascinating.
Yeah, Huey is awesome.
He was an interesting guy who had no idea about all this stuff. Michael J. Fox did know how to play guitar. He had been in bands. He also skateboarded a lot as a kid. And the other guy on the stage with him is his guitar coach, who was helping him during the movie to play well. And Huey Lewis stands up with his bullhorn and says,
Hold it, fellas. I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.
And now we're in the thing that you were talking about, where we're in the town square and we see the woman
to it.
We see the woman raising money to save the clock tower, and she's got her can that she's banging around. And we also see re-elect Goldie Wilson.
Yep.
Another little plant that we have to have.
So good.
And this is where he goes through the thing that you were talking about of he's never going to play in front of someone. What if he gets rejected? He's got a tape. And then there's this moment where he says,
all right, okay, Jennifer, what if I send in the tape and they don't like it? I mean, what if they say I'm no good? What if they say, get out of here, kid, you got no future? I mean, I just don't think I can take that kind of rejection. Jesus, I'm starting to sound like my old man.
And I just love the way they set up like this whole, like, I would like to play guitar on stage at school. I don't think I'm good enough. What if I'm never good enough? Which directly comes from his pants. And like, I'm just like my dad. Like those things all just hit boom, 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 boom. And you're just like, all right, we are set up. And like when you know the movie and you're watching it, you're like, yep, like if you just set up all the pins and we're just gonna knock them all down. Like it's good to go.
What do you? Oh, sorry. What were you gonna say?
well, I was just going to say that the thing about writing is that exposition is the hardest job, I think, in writing. It's like, I got to get this stuff out. And to get it out in a way that is entertaining and that it's not sloggy, where the audience doesn't feel like it's being told what's going on, is so hard. And they do so much in this movie. And what they said about it was that this writing was not fun. This was heavy lifting, start to finish, super, super hard. And so people who have this image of, oh, it must be fun to write a fun movie. No, this is hard, hard work.
And this is also where they established the truck and the idea that Marty's mom is super strict.
Yep.
I think she was born a nun.
Yep.
Right.
And again, like we were saying, like it's every single line is necessary. Like when you break that down and you watch the scene, like the woman comes up and says, literally, she's like, save the clock tower. We want to keep it exactly where it was when it was destroyed by lightning on this night specifically at this exact time. And here's a flyer and you're like,
right.
Yep, need that. And you're like, yeah, my mom was practically a nun growing up. Oh, I hope I'm not going to be like my dad.
And
like,
then and she writes her phone number and I love you on the back of the flyer.
Right.
So that becomes a dual purpose prop that's going to give us all sorts of stuff for later on in the film.
And
Why
Marty kisses Jennifer in front of her dad, which when I was in high school, I would not do that.
Well, why did she give him? Didn't he not have her number before?
No, she was going to her grandma's house.
That's
and
right.
she was
Okay.
writing her grandma's number.
Well, and another thing that I find interesting, I think this is the right time to talk about it, is like, you know, and like when you're writing a movie and you have your main character, like most movies, the way they work is here's a character's flaw.
Here's their flaw.
And here's what they need to learn to overcome, to work through, to make everything better. Like, you know, so like, how do you get to the point at the end of the movie where the character's life is better? And most movies, that is, they learn a thing and they make a different decision than they would have made, and that's how they get there. But Marty, he does have things like he's not super confident. Like he says to Jennifer, like, I'm not going to send this tape in. What if they don't like my music? He then goes, like, he's told his music's too light. There's little things, but most of this movie is about Marty going and like his life ends up better because of everything he changes around him. It's George who actually has like the character arc, which I find really interesting because this movie is, I agree with you, Steve, that like it's one of the most perfect movies. But that's one thing that I was watching. I'm like, it's very interesting the way they set up all the right stuff for Marty to have the arc, but in a different way than you usually would attack it.
Yeah, I mean, you get the sense that he learned lessons by watching his parents go through these things.
That is,
but we don't see him do anything with his new lessons. He doesn't make different choices later on.
Right.
I totally agree. Well, I think it's so my definition of story versus plot comes from Stephen King. I think I've talked about it on the show before, which is just plot is the external conflicts and the mechanism of how all that stuff works, and story is the internal conflicts and the development of characters over time. This is a plot movie.
Yeah.
This is where it's all about the mechanism of all the little things that have to happen. And yeah, he has a character arc, but not that much.
No, it's George McFly who has the character arc.
He has a character
and Marty is sort of the
conduit.
The conduit. I mean, in a way, I mean, to use it because I'm a Disney nerd and I was here. We actually talked about this movie on Cine-Files, but it's the difference of like Aladdin or Belle in Beauty and the Beast. Like Belle doesn't really have a character arc. It's the Beast's movie. She is the thing. She is the thing that she's the main character that gets you there. But the Beast changes. Whereas in Aladdin, he's the one who needs to learn the lesson. And this is more that, which I think is really interesting for the fact that this movie is like just taught to everybody. It's like, this is a perfect movie.
So Michael J. Fox arrives home. The first thing he sees is his wrecked car getting towed.
Oh, come on, man.
And then he goes inside and we get to meet Biff.
I can't believe you loaned me a car without telling me it had a blind spot. I could have been killed.
Now, Biff, I never noticed that the car had any blind spot before when I would drive it. Hi, son.
One of the all-time great bully villains of cinema. Like, I mean, just like represents everything that is a bully.
Apparently Tom Wilson is a very nice guy.
Yeah,
he is. I worked with him for a small part. He did Spectacular Spider-Man. He did a voice. I was super excited. I was like one of my first animated shows, and I got to meet Biff, and he was lovely.
But his assholeness is amazing.
Yeah,
He does. I think he does stand-up comedy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he does like song stand-up comedy where he has a song about making Back to the Future.
Really?
And he talks about, like, people ask him, you know, has he met Michael J. Fox? He's like, yeah, nice guy. And they ask him if he met Crispin Glover. He's like, never talked to him. It's real. Like, if you YouTube Thomas F. Wilson Back to the Future song, it'll pop up. It's really
I will try to put it on the Facebook page.
Oh yeah.
So and he's angry because George didn't tell him that his car had a blind spot.
It's just all everyone else's fault but his.
It's horrible.
I spilt beer all over me when that
who's
truck
gonna pay
smashed into me.
Who's gonna pay for this suit?
That's a good joke, by the way, because it's got levels. Of course, he also needs to get the reports written for him, and when George is hesitating, we get our Hello McFly.
Oh God.
Well, I haven't finished those up yet, but I figured since they were due till...
Hello? Hello? Anybody home?
Oh.
Think, McFly. Think. I gotta have time to get them retyped. Do you realize what would happen if I handed my reports in your handwriting? I'll get fired.
Which my son, because I watched it with Jax, he said, "Is that where that's from?" And I'm like, "Yes."
Oh, that's funny.
You are seeing the origin of this.
And growing up in the 80s, having a Mick last name, I got my fair share of head nods. Hello, McClung, hello.
Oh my God.
Also because you're so short.
Okay.
It's easy to wrap you on the head.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd have
Dog
killed
pile.
somebody.
And this exact scene is going to get repeated later on, including I had to rewrite the reports. I can't turn it in your handwriting, and I sleep in on Saturdays. And
that's sort of something that's like really indicative of the Back to the Future series as a whole. Is they got 3 movies of mileage out of repeating scenes almost specifically.
Yeah.
But like in a good way. Like it works really well. And like this is one of those first moments where like we're gonna see this, we're gonna see it again in a little bit.
Yeah, it doesn't work for me in the sequels so much.
The sequels are a different thing, and we could talk about them another day. Let's just focus on our love for this first movie right now.
Thank you for keeping us on track.
Well, once again, what they do here story-wise also is he is the hero in every situation he's walking into, right? Everybody else is terrible to Marty, and that's how you make your lead a hero constantly throughout the movie, the protagonist rather, kind of a hero character to follow, because everyone else that comes in contact with him is so rude to him or mean to him or whatever. And like you said, Michael, you establish him as soon as he plays the guitar and rides a skateboard, all those kinds of stuff, he's a cool kid, right?
Right.
But so you have to have everyone else come in contact with him be an absolute jerk, so it only reinforces that. The first scene of Biff is him being an absolute jerk, right? The first scene of the principal is him being an absolute jerk.
Oh, yeah.
And the first scene with the parents, them being absolutely, except for, of course, Leah Thompson, is being like just super weird to him or nerdy to him. So he is elevated by the fact that everyone else around him is not good to him or is not doesn't hear him or understand.
Well, and Leah Thompson confirms what Marty said about her earlier, because they talk about Jennifer calling. It's like, I don't think girls should call people.
Girls
I
should
never
call
did
boys
things like that.
Right, exactly.
And one of the moments that happens with Biff and Crispin Glover is you see him making a fist or like doing this thing with his hand, which is sort of the exact same gesture he does. And it's so, watching it multiple times, you go like, oh, he is thinking about hitting Biff. He has probably been thinking about hitting Biff for
30 years.
30 years. And he apologizes to his son.
I know what you're gonna say, son. And you're right. You're right. But, Biff just happens to be my supervisor, and I'm afraid I'm just not very good at confrontations.
That's a thing.
It's so sad, and you're just like that is you get that moment of just like, this guy's so pitiful, and he just has no backbone even to his own kid. Like he just backs down from everybody. Oh, poor George McFly.
So here's the thing that's also interesting to me. It's ironic that Marty is essentially the black sheep of the family, but in a way that's reverse. Because Marty's the cool kid in the family, right? The brother's in jail. The sister's not.
No, the uncle.
The uncle's in jail, but the brother and the sister are super nerds.
Yeah, the brother works for fast food.
Yeah, fast food.
And the sister can't get a date.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing. Like you get home, and it's literally the family version of this scene in Town Square where you just get brother does fast food, sister can't get a date.
Right.
Uncle's in jail, didn't make parole.
But she's wearing the mom jeans or the mom look. Leah Thompson is. Dad's a super nerd.
And having a healthy pour of vodka.
Yeah. Right.
She drinks, so she's just like,
they're all,
hey guys, he didn't get out of jail.
Yeah, they're all, in essence, kind of pseudo on the way path to being losers or losers already.
No, I think
there's no path to being
term.
losers.
Yeah. Well,
his family are losers.
Fair enough. But somehow he's the cool kid who knows how to wear the right jeans, the right shirt, the right look, the right fashion, all that jazz. So in a way, to me, it's like a reverse black sheep of the family. He's actually
it's also like reverse, like most movies.
That rarely happens.
When you're setting up like let's just do the cliche movie today. It's like everyone in my family is cooler than me. Right. I'm the one who doesn't fit in. I feel like an outsider. And you're right. This is literally the reverse of he's like. He doesn't actually say he's embarrassed by his family.
It's there.
But he's embarrassed by it.
It's very clear. Well, and I would say that he is not currently a loser, but there is a little loser inside him, the person that's afraid of rejection.
Exactly.
His fear is that he is going to be one of them.
Yeah.
It's that, and it's circumstantial. It's like everything that's set up is you set him up at the beginning of like, okay, this guy seems cool. Okay, like principal thinks he's a slacker, but he's a cool guy. He plays guitar, he skateboards. So in the 80s, that's like you're automatically a cool kid.
Yeah.
Has a pretty girlfriend.
Like there's no like you're like what's
Hangs out with a strange old man.
Hangs out with like those principals John used to hang out with.
Oh boy. Let me tell you. Marty, come here, sit on my hand.
And then you get home. And you go, Mom doesn't want me hanging out with my girlfriend alone. Dad is a loser, and the car is wrecked. Right. So this has now ruined this thing.
Right.
And then George McFly basically says to him, and this is the other thing that's I think it's more important than I thought it was when I first saw it younger, but like you get older, you watch it. Dad and his brother are both saying to him, you don't need the stress and pressure of being up on stage anyways.
Right.
And that's actually really important. That is a moment where what he is learning from his dad, and this is where you're like, you're going down the road where you're probably going to be a loser, is the lesson you're learning from home is don't try, because the stress and pressure, if you don't make it, and if you do make it, it's going to be so much work. Like, they're setting him up to go down a path to become just like them.
They're teaching him the fear of failure rather than the joy of success. Yeah.
There's so many things that happen in this scene, and one thing I want to point out is, and this is more of a filmmaking thing, is that there's a very basic process the way you shoot a scene. And the basic process is you shoot a master first, which means the big shot that has everything in it, and then you go in and do over the shoulders or close-ups or inserts as you go. And the reason you do it this way is that, first of all, it allows the crew to see the whole scene. Because if you just start with a close-up, well, you might never know what that other person is doing. It might not get locked in properly. It also gives you a chance to light the whole scene properly, so you have exactly how everything's going to look. So when you go in, maybe the next day or something on someone's close-up, you can light it to match the master. It's also more efficient in terms of time because time is so important on the set. When they shot this film, they didn't do it that way because Michael J. Fox was on Family Ties. And so what happened was they went and shot all of the close-ups, the coverage of the characters with a stand-in being Michael J. Fox. And then Michael J. Fox would roll onto the set at 9 o'clock at night, and they would then shoot the master and his coverage. And then he would leave, and they would do anything else without him. That's just a crazy difficult way to make a film. Yeah. And so all the scenes where you see Crispin Glover, you see Leah, they're always acting not with Mike Fox.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
I can't tell you how hard that is. And it also shows why Zemeckis has the kind of a brain that can do Back to the Future 2, where you have all these multiple things. You have to keep so much in your head. Yeah. Or to do Forrest Gump or things like that, where there's so much complexity and the way you shot it. That means the director has to be able to visualize the movie, and it's not really being in front of him. One more thing again, we're just planting everything, because the other thing we plant is the way that mom and dad met, which is Grandpa hit Dad with a car.
Yep. If Grandpa hadn't hit him, then none of you would have been born.
Yeah, well, still don't understand what Dad was doing in the middle of the street.
What was it, George? Bird watching?
What, Lorraine? What?
And even the little, what were you doing in the middle of the street,
Dad? Bird watching? What, Lorraine? What?
Yeah, and this is fascinating. Crispin is and we should take a moment.
We definitely have to take several moments for Crispin Glover.
Is one of the most unusual performances in a film ever. Should not have any business working in a film like this, yet somehow it absolutely does, because he is so far out there, yet he's not so far out there to lose the continuity or the realism that you're trying to establish in the movie.
When he's watching
Honeymooners,
which again is a plant.
There's another plant.
But like, there it is.
The Rick Messina laugh.
Oh, Rick.
Oh, Rick. McClung, you mentioned me, McClung. It is. It's so weird.
It is. He's weird. I mean,
he said
really
it was.
clear.
He said this is. He said it on Letter or whatever these interviews he did. Not the one he kicked at Letter, but some other interview. I think most recently they interviewed him about it. And he said to me, this was a drama.
Right.
I played it as a drama the whole time.
This is why he's not a sane person.
Right.
I mean,
he said he didn't see the comedy in this at all. To him, he played a certain way. The Eric Stoltz, this is how they directed him. So he's like, this is the way I'm playing it. This is what you want. This is how I'm playing it.
Well, if he thought he was playing it for a drama, I mean, it's so...
It's so crazy, but I mean, if you really do think about it, like you think through his performance and everything he does, like I think what works for the movie is he's dead serious for the whole thing. I mean,
sure. Well, that's the way to play comedy.
Yeah.
But his character is insane.
Right.
I mean,
especially like loser George McFly. Like, it
is just so crazy. And Leah Thompson, her performance is fantastic as old mom. And I love the moment too, because we go on after we describe about the getting hit by the car and brought up to a room, and he looked like a lost puppy, and then they go to what the daughter calls the fish under the sea or something.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's the enchanted under the sea dance. And she describes like them having their first kiss, and then she looks at him and she says,
and it was then that I realized that I was going to spend the rest of my life with him.
And that look from her while he is laughing at the honeymooners and she has her big glass of vodka, is so sad.
It is. And I wonder how many moms at this time who watched this movie felt the same way about their husbands. Like, they didn't turn out the way I thought.
Strangely,
but it sure was a beautiful...
Karen was drinking a big glass of vodka when we were watching this film.
Wait a minute.
She did look over at me.
There's so much about
Hold
this
on,
film
guys.
that isn't just. Oh no.
It just got real.
There's so much about this one that isn't just for teenagers, right? There's something here to explore. And you're right. Leah Thompson's performance, considering she is either the same age or younger than Michael J. Fox, or not
They're
that much
young,
older,
yeah.
is incredible. Her old Leah Thompson.
In both roles.
Or middle-aged Leah Thompson. Yeah, in both roles.
It's the middle of the night. Marty gets a call from Doc, and did you fall asleep? And the answer, yes, he did fall asleep. And he grabs his video camera and he heads off to the mall.
The Twin Pines Mall.
The Twin Pines Mall. He sees Einstein at the truck. The Einstein is the dog. And there's a big noise and there's smoke as the back of the truck opens up. And this is an entrance.
Yep.
The entrance of the DeLorean. This is perfectly, beautifully shot. As it comes out just billowing with smoke. And the music stings as it backs out. The camera moves along the car and that gold wing door opens up. And before we get to Doc Brown, I want to tell you another little thing. Originally, the time machine was not built into a DeLorean. The time machine was built into a refrigerator.
Oh.
Yes.
Huh.
And Steven Spielberg thought that was great. And they just kept
I'll
going.
use it again in Crystal Skull.
I was just
That's
gonna
what I'm
say.
saying. The two
Oh,
elements
my
that
God.
didn't stay. And what was that conclusion of this film? A nuclear explosion.
Oh, Steven.
The gun.
Steven.
Some things get cut for a reason.
Yeah. But Zemeckis and Bob Gale were not satisfied with the refrigerator. They said, you know what, we want it to be portable. And then they actually were trying to find a car that looked the most like a rocket ship, and naturally a DeLorean.
Interesting.
And it's so funny because today, I don't think the level of the DeLorean jokes actually works for it. No one knows that stuff anymore.
The John DeLorean story.
But in the 80s, this is a big deal.
He was caught for, was caught on tape, cocaine
dealing, and the company collapsed.
Yeah,
and,
And also, I think Back to the Future single-handedly just made DeLoreans cool. Like, if I ever see DeLorean, I'm like, 88 miles per hour. Oh, like,
so the gold wing door of that DeLorean opens, and out comes Doc Brown.
The best.
So great. You want to know who was originally cast?
Who?
It's actually really good and would have worked. John Lithgow.
Ooh, interesting.
Not as good as Christopher Lloyd, I don't think, for this role, because Christopher Lloyd is Doc Brown.
He is.
I mean, that's the hard thing is like I can definitely see a John Lithgow Doc Brown.
Yeah.
But and that would be great. But like this is I mean, Christopher Lloyd, this is the most iconic thing. Like Doc Brown is the 80s.
Yeah.
I kind of want to slip into that universe where Doc Brown is John Lithgow, Eric Stoltz is Marty McFly, and Melora Hardin is Jennifer.
Was he a casualty of the Eric Stoltz?
No,
filming?
he had to drop out right at a month before. He never shot.
There's a universe where I would like to see that movie.
I mean, John Lithgow's a fine actor.
He is. Certainly, you could say that Third Rock from the Sun portrayal is essentially a version of Doc Brown.
Sure.
Yeah.
You could say that.
You could say that, but I will also say that nothing is Christopher Lloyd.
True.
What he does is so insane. Apparently, he would never go full on in rehearsal, so they never knew what he was going to do.
That's
so he
brilliant.
would kind of halfway do it, and then when they would shoot, he would do some crazy stuff. And what they finally started doing was we're just going to shoot all the rehearsals because they would blow the take anyway because you have to measure to get focus distance, and cameramen have to know what you're going to do, and the dolly grip and all those people, they didn't know. So they just we're just going to shoot all the rehearsals and force him to go 100%. And once he locked it in, he was very consistent. But man, his performance is wild.
Welcome to my latest experiment. This is a big one, the one I've been waiting for all my life.
And we're going to videotape this experiment, and we show him. And so Marty, who has a video camera, starts rolling, and he introduces himself, and this is a temporal experiment, and he puts Einstein in the DeLorean, and he straps it in, and then he notes that you have two stopwatches that they're in sync, and he pulls out a big remote which controls the car, which is awesome, and he sends that car away, backs it way up.
My calculations are correct. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
And every little kid in the 80s, he said shit.
And then in the edited for TV version, you're gonna see some serious stuff.
And I don't know, what is the purpose of having him spin the wheels for like 30 seconds before the car actually goes?
Also, let's talk basic science safety. I get it.
Oh boy.
You're going to hit 88 miles per hour, it's going to disappear. Maybe just don't have it drive right
Don't
at you.
stand
though.
right.
Like, you know, I get it. It's cool. And also then, I love 80s special effects. Like when I was a kid, I was like, this looks so real. And I'm like, you're standing in fire. And I don't know. Like, why is your foot not on fire right now?
Well, there's the moment, too, where Marty starts to step out of the way of the oncoming car, and Doc gives him a look, and he steps back in. I'm like, no, there's literally a car coming towards me.
I can actually videotape this from over here. Dude.
Over here.
I'm good.
We'll get the same effect.
But the car does disappear, and Doc is celebrating, and of course, Marty at first thinks that he disintegrated Einstein, which he didn't.
Jesus Christ, Doc, you disintegrated Einstein.
Calm down, Marty. I didn't disintegrate anything. The molecular structure of both Einstein and the car are completely intact.
Where the hell are they?
The appropriate question is, when the hell are they? You see, Einstein has just become the world's first time traveler. I sent him into the future.
And then we have, of course, Marty's amazing line, which is,
Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me that you built a time machine out of a DeLorean?
The way I see it, if you're gonna build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style? Besides, the stainless steel construction made the flux dispersal.
and then all of a sudden he realizes it's a minute and pushes Marty out of the way, and the DeLorean reappears, now strangely covered in ice.
Look out!
So where did he go?
What do you mean?
Where did the dog go?
It went a minute forward in time.
He went a minute forward in time there. He wasn't gone for a minute. He just jumped time.
Why is he covered in ice?
I think the re-entry?
Apparently some effective time travel.
Because I mean, you've got all the science facts at your fingertips.
I just
wonder if you've got
when
an
you say
answer
someone
for
goes
me.
a minute into the future, like
Yeah.
he didn't go somewhere else for a minute. He literally went a minute into the future.
Doc Brown says it's not where the hell did he go, it's when the hell did he go.
As far as Einstein is concerned, the trip was instantaneous.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
And
why
was
his
there ice
watch
on the
is
top?
exactly 1 minute behind mine.
Yes.
Right.
It's all right there in the dialogue, John.
It is. But the ice isn't. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
And then he opens up the DeLorean and shows him here's a whole bunch of exposition. Here's the flux capacitor. Here's the time we're going to. Here's the time we came from. Says you could go back to 1776. I love the joke of you could go see the birth of Christ on December 25th, year 0.
Yep. But then they do really seamlessly just give you the information you need, which is, and here was a great day for science.
11/5,
which is what gets it, which is
1955.
why that's put in there. But it's like it gives you exactly the information. This was the day I discovered this.
I was standing on the
in here,
toilet.
like,
it says exactly what happened. Christopher Lloyd is so great. And his little, he's very excited, and then a wistful look comes over his face as he's describing this.
Things have certainly changed around here. I remember when this was all farmland as far as the eye could see. Old man Peabody owned all of this. He had this crazy idea about breeding pine trees.
well, and like you were saying, like exposition is always really hard. And when you have an actor like Christopher Lloyd, you can basically be like, this happens a lot where you're like, give this character all the exposition because it'll be fine.
Right.
I mean, that happens a lot where you're just like, let's just do this. And like with Christopher Lloyd, it's like he literally just talks for a few minutes about time travel and gives you all the information you need about the DeLorean, how it works, and you're just like, yeah,
Okay.
I'm thoroughly entertained by all this. I'm not bored at all.
Well,
He
and not
keeps
just that,
talking.
he also goes, 30 years ago, this used to be all farmland, and there was this guy who wanted to breed pine trees.
Right.
You know, all of this is all necessary
Yeah, it's
information.
all there.
It's crazy.
This is heavy duty, Doc. This is great. Does it run like on regular unleaded gasoline?
Unfortunately, no. It requires something with a little more kick. Plutonium.
Plutonium. Wait a minute. Are you telling me that this sucker is nuclear?
Hey, keep rolling there. No. This sucker's electrical. But I need a nuclear reaction to generate the 1.21 gigawatts of electricity I need.
So you actually pronounce the word gigawatts.
Not anymore, you don't.
Apparently, Zemeckis and Gale interviewed a scientist who pronounced it gigawatts, and they wrote it in a script with the J.
Oh, that's so funny.
And they always pronounce it that way until later on, everyone's like, it's giga. Giga is, like gigabits.
Yeah.
Giga is the actual word.
Giggity.
I bet that scientist was like, as soon as he said it and didn't want to correct himself,
Maybe.
he's just like, I'm just gonna keep saying gigawatts.
Yeah. And what?
I don't want to get.
And now with more exposition, we find that he ripped off the Libyans of their plutonium.
Yeah, which terrible idea.
It's horrible.
Built them a fake bomb. Like this, you don't think
not
this is
gonna
gonna
work.
come back to get you, dude?
Look, Doc Brown knows things about the future, but he doesn't plan well. I mean, he makes some
That's
poor
what I argue.
choices.
Doc Brown is
He
the
spent a lot
coolest-
more time getting all those clocks to be a half hour ahead than thinking through this plutonium plan.
This is the coolest version of Doc Brown is in this movie. The second and third not so
Well,
not
even-
as cool or fun.
My favorite thing about this, one of my favorite things about the entire series is he literally says in this scene that he would go to he would love to see how all of these games turn out so he can play some bets.
Yeah.
He doesn't say that. He says I could find out how 25 years of World Series comes out.
Yeah.
He doesn't
Why
say
would you
anything
want-
about placing
Okay,
bets.
he doesn't place bets, but why?
But that's the
When
groundwork
you
is laid.
say I would like to see how 25 years of World Series games turn out, like
Right, sure.
there's
I
a reason
agree.
for that. And I just find it real. I always found it really funny that the thing they just decided to hang their hat on in the second movie was that one thing that
Right.
it's very
Which, by the way, they say they had no thought of a second movie. They hadn't. There wasn't
No
a
surprise.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's well documented. I think that whole to be continued thing was just this will be
No, the to be continued thing was only added on the VHS
Right.
tape. It's not in the actual.
That's one of those
theatrical release.
urban things, like the urban legend things, like the Bernstein Bears, like how you people, like everyone remembers. You know,
I don't know what this is.
there's the
remembers the Bernstein Bears.
no.
I know what they are. I've read those books to my son.
So there's these articles that are written Bernstein Bears. Everybody remembers it spelled Bernstein Bears, not like EIN, not AIN, but it was never spelled that way, and people swear that that's a mistake. Just like people swear that they remember seeing To Be Continued in the movie theater. At the people will it's a thing that's ingrained in their memories to a point where they're like, no, that people will swear to you that they were in the movie theater and that was the first time I saw It To Be Continued and I thought it was amazing. And not a thing.
Yeah.
And Doc is packing up his suitcase to put in the car because he's going to go into the future.
What am I thinking of? I almost forgot to bring extra plutonium. How did I ever expect to get back? One pellet, one trip. I must be out of my mind.
Which is, again, another plant. And just as he's going to plant it, Einstein looks over and he goes, what's that?
I smell terrorists.
He smells terrorists. And we turn, and there are the Libyans in a VW bus.
All Latinos.
All Latinos, are they?
All Latino actors.
Oh, the 80s, man.
Yeah, the 80s.
It's the 80s.
Once you see one brown guy, you've seen them all. Such an interesting plot line, though, to have Libyan terrorists. At the time in 85 is a big deal.
Sure,
Libya
no.
and all of that.
But also it is it's one of those things, and I mean, Back to the Future holds up much better than a lot of other movies in the 80s does. But the casual use of terrorists for just in the world we live in today, you're like, if we're going into terrorism, this is a serious movie. But this is not that. And you're like, I stole some. They wanted a bomb.
They wanted to build a nuclear weapon.
Yeah. That's why Stoltz was playing. This is tragic. This is super
I
tragic.
think Stoltz,
Eric, what are you doing?
Stoltz had some rare
Doing a
insight.
movie about terrorism and science.
And a time machine, man.
And I might have sexual attraction to my mother.
Yeah, I might be sleeping with my mom. Dude, that's an independent
Heavy.
film.
That's some Oedipal stuff. Right
That is
there.
an independent
You know
film,
what?
son.
Doing the indie dark Back to the Future,
That's what I'm saying.
it's not a bad idea.
I want into that future.
Get
I
Eric
wanna see
Stoltz to play Doc Brown.
that. Oh, do it now. Oh.
That's a moneymaker right there. You just don't nobody steal that idea listening.
Terrorists and time
Guys,
travel.
I got to
and-
talk to you guys afterwards about a business investment that I'm thinking about.
So they're coming in. They've got guns. Doc pulls out a gun.
They're bazookas, man. Not just guns. A bazooka.
Don't bring a pistol to a bazooka fight.
And Marty watches them gun down Doc.
Yeah.
Again, tragic.
Tragic.
Eric Stoltz wasn't wrong. It's a very upsetting movie.
Yeah.
And we have Marty with the classic, "No, you bastards!"
Oh, God.
That's
That was some tough acting from Michael J. Fox in that moment.
He just put on a full dance set on
Yeah,
Family
it's
Time.
fair.
It's fair.
He was really
And
tired.
he was arguing with Meredith Baxter Birney.
He was channeling it. You bastards.
Meredith.
Let's say how many.
Just picturing a bunch of Meredith Baxter Bernies in that VW,
In the
chasing
VW.
it down.
You're trying to kill my career.
How many outtakes do they have him saying Meredith, you bastard?
You bastard. Robert's like, Michael, man, you did it again.
So
We can't put blonde wigs on the terrorists, Michael.
So they corner him. They're about to shoot him, and the gun jams. And he jumps into, as we knew he would, into the DeLorean, starts speeding away. There is a very fun car chase in which it almost gets up to 88, and then it doesn't, and then he turns, because you got to tease it a little bit.
Yeah.
And then that big bazooka comes out behind him that he sees in the side view mirror, and then he punches it, and right up to 88, and boom, slams into a scarecrow, and then slams into the barn.
And I do like, I it's one of those little things, but I love that we're with him in the perspective. Like, we don't ever see the moment from the outside, like from what the Libyan see. Like, we don't see that amazing moment again where the DeLorean disappears. We're literally in the car with him.
Yeah.
We
And there's a
see them
scarecrow.
all. We see a scarecrow.
So here's what's interesting about this. It goes to ILM is the effects company that's handling all this, and they spent a whole lot of time developing what does time travel look like. And they came up with all this conceptual art and everything you would see as you went through time travel. And finally, Zemeckis said, no, it's instantaneous. You don't see nothing. There is nothing to see. And I was thinking about this.
Because you don't go anywhere.
Because you don't go anywhere. And it's
Just
literally
like Einstein didn't.
You went somewhere with ice. I know that much.
And I was thinking about it as like, what did ILM do 1 year later?
Right.
Which is Star Trek 4, which has the weirdest time travel sequence in the history of the universe.
I forgot about that.
Right.
That is so. I think I liked it when I saw it in 1986, but man, it is a weird.
Oh
sequence.
man, can you imagine like Marty McFly's head becoming clouds, Nimbus cloud go weird, the Einstein showing up as a cloud formation? That would be brilliant.
I just love the idea that somebody a year later was like, "What are we gonna do?" You're like, "I'll tell you what you're gonna do. Go get the file."
Probably the same guy that lit the dog food.
God.
I'll tell you what you do. We're working on that on the show.
It was the Star Trek time travel scene that killed his career. Back to dog food.
You need some time travel or some dog food? I'm your guy.
So he crashes into this barn, and immediately lights come on in the house. And man, that family got up quick.
Oh yeah!
As they come down, they open up the door to the barn. They see the DeLorean, and the dad goes, "Oh, it's a rocket ship." And the kid goes, "No, Dad, look!" and shows him a comic book, which has like zombies from outer space on it. And I have to tell you a brief story. So Sid Sheinberg, who is the big, super powerful executive, he made several good suggestions, which he suggested that they change the name of Marty's mom from Meg to Lorraine. He suggested that don't call him Professor Brown, call him Doc Brown. Another really good suggestion. Yeah. He also suggested a new title. He was not happy with the title Back to the Future. He said this should be called Spaceman from Pluto.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm sorry?
He saw the thing on the comic book, which was like zombies from Pluto or space zombies from Pluto. He said it should be called Spaceman from Pluto. Yeah. And he sent this as a note to Spielberg, Zemeckis, and Gale. And they're like, what do we do? I mean, this is an unbelievably powerful person who's asked this. Yeah. How do we say that this is we can't do this? And they all love the title Back to the Future, obviously. So this is how Spielberg handles it. And I think this is so brilliant. He writes Sheinberg a note that says, "Dear Sid, thanks so much for sending us that this morning. We all had such a great laugh. What a funny thing to send. You made our morning. That was hilarious. Thanks so much for everything, Steven."
Wow.
And they never heard of it again.
That is a baller move.
Right?
Baller move.
Hey, Spielberg took a chance.
That's a Spielberg move.
Yeah, it's Spielberg move.
That's a Spielberg move.
Only he can get away with that move.
He has some huevos, man. Yeah. So, and as this family is looking at this car, the gold wing door pops open, and out comes Marty McFly. What we haven't mentioned was they have these radiation suits, and he has the mask down, and the radiation suit looks like the character in the comic book, and they run screaming.
Yep.
And he falls down.
And then I love when he comes out and he's got the hood up. So you're like, okay, well, like now they'll see he's a human. They're like, the son, he's already started mutating, taking on the human form. You're like, whoa. And then what is it? And the dad's like, "You mutated bastard!"
They open fire on him with a shotgun.
Yeah. That's right.
He jumps back in the DeLorean. And by the way, they have 3 DeLoreans. One's the hero car, which is the car that looks perfect. Everything is built on it. Every detail is pristine and nice. The second is the stunt car, which they're like, you cannot show this in close shots, but this is what drives through the barn and does all the things that are difficult. The third is one for process shots. They've literally cut the DeLorean in pieces, so you can be behind Marty looking forward through the windshield. You could be on the side looking to the side. And they've just cut the DeLorean all in pieces. So he's in the stunt car right now, drives out of the barn, and at the Twin Pine farm, what does he do?
Takes out a pine.
Takes out a pine. Again, it's
boy,
so...
is that farmer mad.
Yeah.
My pine tree!
So he's gotten away and he's driving and he thinks, okay, this is a dream. I got to get a grip on myself. And then he slams on his brakes because there he sees the Lyon Estates, which is where his family lives. And it is just a big open field. The entrance gate, which we had seen in the previous scene where he got to his house, and a big sign that says, opening soon, Lyon Estates.
And what is it? It says something like, live in the house of tomorrow today or something like that. Like it's clearly set up like these are going to be this amazing, perfect neighborhood. And you're like, no, it's a real shithole in 85.
And he yells at some people that are driving by, please, you got to help me. And they run away. Yeah. And then
that woman does not want her husband to stop.
No,
she really does not.
That was great.
And then of course his car won't start and he has to push it down behind some bushes. And we go back to Hill Valley to the beautiful sounds of Mr. Sandman.
Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream.
Boom, boom.
It's a very musical episode of Cine-Files.
It is. It's been a lot of singing.
Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Make her complexion like peaches.
And we see this whole new world. We see there's a movie theater with a Ronald Reagan, Barbara Stanwyck movie playing. I think it's Queen of Montana. He's distracted and a car honks at him. He looks over at a car pulling into the Texaco station and 4 guys come out, which I remember people like checking your oil and doing your windshield and pumping your gas. My son had no idea what was happening. He's like, what's happening there? Apparently Texaco gave them everything. They gave them the actual design of Texaco stations, Texaco pumps, Texaco uniforms from their archives. Yeah. And then that company went bankrupt. So, we see the big music playing is Davy Crockett and 16 Tons. We see a kid bouncing around on spring shoes. We see the beautiful pristine town square, the moving clock tower where the bell goes off, and he sees a guy throw away a newspaper. He looks at it and sees the date, and he's still going, this has got to be a dream. And he sees a sign for a public telephone in the soda shop. He goes into the soda shop, which in the future, in the 80s, was like a jazzercise studio.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
This is, by the way, one of the few interior/exterior sets on the Universal lot. Most of these buildings you can't go in. In this one, you can go in. It's been in tons of things. He goes in and someone says,
"Hey, kid, what'd you do, jump ship?" "What? Well, what's with the life preserver?"
This is a joke that goes over and over again.
Oh, yeah. They just don't stop with that life jacket.
Nope. And whenever I wear my vests around the Collider offices, I get that crack every single time by somebody.
Well, but like, and now it's become so like tied to this movie that like whenever like anyone is wearing one of those vests, you're like, what's Marty McFly going on over there?
Even if you're not wearing an orange one.
He goes to the back, looks in the phone book, finds Doc Brown's address, tears the page out right in front of the guy, which I was like, dude, what are you tearing out pages in my phone book? And then he asks about the address, and the guy says, "Are you going to order something?" And I love this bunch of jokes.
Give me a tab.
Tab? I can't give you a tab unless you order something.
Right, give me a Pepsi free.
You want a Pepsi, pal? You're gonna pay for it.
Look, just give me something without any sugar in it, okay?
Something without sugar.
And out comes a cup of coffee. That's a great little run of jokes, even if nobody today knows what a tab is.
That's true. But I don't think like this movie. I also like. There's this one moment when he is in the phone booth ripping on the thing, but like he's got his little digital watch that beeps.
Oh.
And there's this moment where the guy running the diner like looks at him funny, and it's like it's a really great thing. Like we talk about this a lot in movies. It came up. With Captain Marvel and the whole like should she know what a flannel is? Like when you're really on top of your game with your writing, and they really are. They thought of every single thing that he would have on him, or that he would say, or that he would do, and they're like, what's everything that would be incongruous? What's everything that wouldn't work that people wouldn't know? And they just, and that's where you get all of these great jokes, and it just doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of movies that come out today where they would have somebody in a vest like that, and just it wouldn't occur to them to have anybody remark on it, and they just have everybody remark on it.
It's so I'm just so in awe of this screenplay, not because of like the beautiful dialogue, and not because of like depth of character or huge meaning or anything, just of like this is tight and hard to do. And he sits down next to someone who we don't exactly see, and then we hear,
"Hey, McFly,
And there's a perfect turn in sync because he's sitting next to his dad.
Well, and even like leading into it,
They're in
he
the
gets,
same position,
He gets
right?
frustrated. He's so stressed out. He sort of leans down and he puts his hand on his head.
that's right.
And so even before you get Hey McFly, they are in matching poses, father and son. And then when you hear it and they both turn together, it's.
And there's young Biff, and we basically play out the same scene.
Yeah.
Except now it's about homework.
Oh, hey, Biff. Hey, guys. How are you doing?
Yeah, you got my homework finished, McFly?
Well, actually, I figured since it wasn't due till Monday.
Hello? Hello? Anybody home? Hey, think, McFly, think. I gotta have time to recopy it. You realize what would happen if I hand in my homework in your handwriting? I'll get kicked out of school. You wouldn't want that to happen, would you?
And young Crispin Glover, man, what he does is just crazy.
And Marty McFly's face. I mean, Michael J. Fox's face for this whole scene is great because like it just there's not really a change in his face. He just has this like wide-eyed like what is happening, and it doesn't change. He just like for the entire scene, he's just like, what? It's amazing.
Well, and this is why like Michael J. Fox is amazing. He deserved being this huge star at this moment. He is so good and so funny and gets the tone just right, unlike Eric Stoltz. And again, we get another life preserver joke, and then the Biff and his gang. By the way, Billy Zane is one of the guys in the gang.
Yeah,
and Casey
Shamasco.
Oh, really?
And then there's the pugilist in Young Gun.
And then there's the third
friend
guy.
Billy Zane.
And they head out. It's a really nice 2-shot with George and Marty sitting in the foreground, seeing the guys leave in the background. And then we cut to this shot, which is exactly how you don't do things, which is that you have the profile of George and Marty is totally obscured behind him.
Oh, yeah.
And then he slowly peeks out from behind George's profile with this completely stunned, bewildered expression on his face. It's amazing.
What? You're George McFly. Yeah, who are you?
And just as George is going, what are you staring at me? And just as he starts to talk about him, up comes Goldie.
Why you gonna let those guys treat you like that?
Well, they're bigger than me.
And Goldie says, if you let people treat like that now, they're going to be taking advantage of you the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Look at me. You think I'm gonna spend the rest of my life in this slop house?
Watch it, Goldie.
No, sir. I'm gonna make something of myself. I'm going to night school, and one day I'm gonna be somebody.
That's right, he's gonna be mayor.
Yeah.
By the way, one thing the 80s are so good at casual racism. But like which is like it's like
true.
That is
which
a quote.
Well, because it's like
It's true.
It's like it's one of those things like obviously like that's the setup for the joke, and then you know, well, the colored guy's never gonna be mayor, and you're like, I am gonna be mayor, you'll see, but you're like, it's this thing where we're like, okay, it's the 50s, so we're gonna establish that racism's a thing, but it's like friendly racism. Like, you're just my buddy, you're my boss, it's okay, and you're like,
Yeah, because the coffee shop owner says that. That'll be the day. Right. By the way, I love that coffee shop owner. He is a perfect
great.
character
He's
actor.
great. And again, like I'm not knocking on Back to the Future.
No.
Like it is what it is. But it's one of those differences of the way things like that doesn't happen. You don't do that in movies anymore.
Here's my question, and this goes into time travel rules.
I knew, by the way, I knew when I was watching the movie preparing for this that you were going to say what you're about to say, but please go.
Well, so does Goldie decide to become mayor because Marty gives him the idea? That's how it appears in this scene.
Yes.
Except that all changes in Back to the Future time travel rules affect the future. Therefore, in the future, he shouldn't have been mayor because Marty had never gone back in time to tell him that.
So when we're in Hill Valley in the beginning of the movie, you see that Goldie is mayor. That's why Michael J. Fox says it. But when Michael J. Fox goes back and says he's going to be mayor, and he's like, yeah, I am going to be mayor. That's clearly where he gets the idea to be mayor, which never would have happened in the timeline where before Marty went back in time.
So here, let me give you a different example. If you look at the clock tower, in the beginning of the movie, there is no hole where Doc's foot slipped through the clock tower where it broke. And when you go to the end of the movie, that hole is there because the future has been changed by things that were done in the past, just as Marty's parents were changed. But Goldie was already mayor in the previous timeline. Therefore, Marty didn't change him to be mayor.
Yeah.
And Chuck Berry and Johnny B. Good clearly exist in the previous timeline. So Chuck Berry couldn't have heard Johnny B. Good from Marty.
So I have two answers.
Yes. One is it's a movie.
One is the setup is so good. Like, and this does happen sometimes. Like sometimes when you're writing something, you go, okay, Because, like, these guys, to your point, if they figured out that the clock tower doesn't have the hole in first 1985 and it does, they clearly thought this through and knew what they were doing.
Yes.
So, sometimes the joke is just worth it.
Yep.
And in both of these cases, Marty saying that's going to be mayor. Yeah, I am going to be mayor. And the Johnny B. Good stuff. The joke is just good enough that you go, we're going to do this because it's good enough. The other thing, the pseudoscience time travel, is that when you've dealt with multiverses and other stuff and you've read a lot of comics, sometimes things can happen in both timelines, but in different ways. So the way that I just justify it in my nerdy time travel canon is that in the original 1985, Johnny B. Good got written in some other way, and Goldie at some point decided he was going to be mayor.
Who we knew was ambitious and working hard and going to night school.
Marty McFly coming back in time changed it slightly.
Right.
And so some things he changed drastically.
His parents.
Like his parents. And some things just maybe happened a little faster. Like,
I'm fine with this.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like, there's.
By the way, I love that we're like, let's talk about science. Roka's face right now is like, yeah, okay, time travel.
Yeah, I know. Was a big deal. he could have been mayor in multiple timelines.
Sure.
So it doesn't matter if he mentioned it or not. It still could have occurred anyway.
I would say,
but I appreciate all your exchanging long words about it. Like, I really did. And you're right. I think you're right. Sometimes the joke is worth it.
Sometimes the joke
Sometimes the joke
and
is
good
worth it.
writing means you can get away with it.
Yeah. I would say, as time travel rules go, Back to the Future is probably my favorite. Terminator time travel rules are basically, it's all going to happen anyway. Nothing you're doing is really making a difference here.
I've never seen a more useless series.
Terminator 1 is that, and then Terminator 2 goes out of its way to say it's not all destined to be, we're on our own. Like they actually,
and then later on they go,
and then later on it goes off the rails with time travel rules. Like it's good. Like Back to the Future does have a very consistent set of rules. And
they bend a little bit,
as we have said, and a character that is so good and entertaining with exposition that they can literally whiteboard their theory of time travel and it works. Like you're like,
as opposed to Star Trek, which is just the worst. Star Trek is just, we're creating new timelines all over the place, and who knows?
They're violating the Prime Directive all over the place in that film. Nerd time.
because in the world in the Star Trek universe, human beings are the hold my beer of the Federation.
They really are.
Just going around. By the way, that's not me. That's from the internet. Somebody has written this whole extended thing about how you have the Vulcans who are smarter, the Klingons who are better fighters, but humanity has sort of somehow taken the main spot because they are the hold my beer of the Federation who just does whatever the fuck they want, and the Vulcans are like, we don't know how they do it, but they seem to do it.
Well, that is,
not even American humanity. Let's be real. Even Chekhov is an Americanized version of a Russian, so it's American humanity says, "Hold my beer."
Well, it's funny that you say that because this is geeky, but at the very beginning of Kirk and Spock, Kirk beats Spock at chess, at 3D chess, which he does regularly, and it's just what you said. Wait, I'm way smarter than you.
Yeah.
Why do you keep beating me? And it's because.
Yeah, it is. If you look this up on the internet, and this is a sidebar from Back to the Future, but it's very entertaining because this guy literally, it's something along the lines of he's like, the Vulcans are talking, someone else is talking to the Vulcans, and the Vulcans are like, look, we told them not to blow up the warp core, so they blew up the warp core, and that somehow sent them into an alternate timeline, and in that alternate timeline, they decided to kill bad versions of themselves. They built themselves another warp core, but had to use it for something else, but then somehow knocked themselves back into our timeline with more technology than they ever had before, and now we have all this technology that we've never had, so like, we just kind of let them do what they're gonna do, because we assume they're going to just blow themselves up at some point.
Yeah. We're going to take the benefit of it while they're still around as a species.
So George leaves the diner.
Best segue. So George leaves the diner and goes.
Marty chases him
to peep on Lorraine.
Yes. Finds his bike, looks up at his tree, and there's George with the binoculars on. This would not be in a movie today.
No.
There's a lot of things that would not be in a movie today.
This one is.
Casual racism, casual sexism of the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Was off the charts as well.
Casual rapiness at the end of the movie, but we'll get
well,
there later.
That's not casual. But that is like, that is a bad person doing a bad thing where the hero stops him.
Right.
That is not one of the hero's dad who is spying on his mom, falls out of the tree. Marty pushes him out of the way of the car, and then Marty gets hit by the car.
And one of my favorite lines in the movie is,
I hit another one.
I hit another one of those kids. Not I hit a kid. I hit another one of those kids.
Another one of these kids jumped in front of my car.
Right.
How
There's a
many
whole
kids?
There's a whole separate subplot where Lorraine's dad is a child murderer.
Oh yeah, or
It's
just has
like
terrible eyes or something.
Yeah, like he's totally blind on the road, knocking over kids.
And that sound that it's clearly Foleyed, but that sound that Michael J. Fox's head makes when he, that clunk.
Well, and there's a great shot too of after it of Michael J. Fox in the background and then Crispin Glover sitting up into the foreground, and it's so perfect because that is a perfect plant payoff because we have established if Dad hit George with the car, they brought him up to my room, and I seemed like a lost puppy, and I fell in love with it. And the minute that Crispin Glover sits up, not being the person that gets hit in the car, we go, oh
yeah, Marty has taken his spot in the timeline. Yep.
Cut to the dark.
Again, this is one of those iconic Back to the Future scenes that gets repeated over and over and over again. And this is the first one, and it's so good.
This scene is so good. So my son watching it, we had to stop the movie because he was like, this scene is really creepy. This is really creepy. It's creeping me out. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. There's some weird stuff happening in this scene.
Mom, is that you? You're there now. Just relax. You've been asleep for almost 9 hours now.
I had a horrible nightmare. Dreamed that I went back in time. It was terrible.
Well, safe and sound now, back in good old 1955.
1955?
Light turns on, and there is young Leah Thompson. She's gorgeous.
Beautiful.
And her performance in this stuff is, I'm lacking words.
It's just like every line in the scene is infused with just like pure innocent sex, but pure sex.
Right.
Like,
she is horny and innocent.
She is horny.
I mean, she is so into in a predatory way.
Yeah.
Like she wants to get what she wants to get.
Right. Which is
when he asks where his pants are.
Where are my pants?
Over there? On my hope chest?
I'm like, that might be, I can remember being in the theater and hearing that line and just thinking that is the funniest line.
Yeah.
That is so brilliant. And the whole scene is that.
I didn't know what a hope chest was, but I got the gist.
I got the joke. And then, and as we discussed, he calls him Calvin because he has the Calvin Klein purple underwear.
And you guys can talk about how beautiful she is in that scene. I think young Michael Vogel had some feelings about that purple underwear on Michael J. Fox.
I'm sure.
Letting everybody...
Don't sully the film like that.
Listen, I'm just saying... And he looked real cute in those little purple Calvin Klein.
And she comes over and sits next to him and then touches his face.
Yeah,
and
man.
It's so creepy.
My son is right. This is creepy.
It's like George. It's like George Lucas goes, "Hey, I'm gonna get a little brother sister action." Steven Spielberg, hold my beer. Hold my beer. I got your beat on that, son. We're gonna see how far out we can go on this one.
The Oedipal. No one really got into the full Oedipal power of time travel. I mean, there's some stuff happening here.
But it's just such a great, like any scene is built around like just that good push-pull of conflict. And it's just like, you're so with Marty on this. It's like you see what's happening and you get it. And you are 100% with him of like, this is weirding me out. And when he falls off the bed.
Lorraine, are you up there? Oh my God, it's my mother. Quick, put your pants back on.
It's all perfect.
Well, and it's jeans flying, flying off camera, hitting him in the face.
Well, and it's so perfectly set up with my mom must have been raised a nun.
Right.
Is that everything has been reversed in this one moment in the scene.
Oh, I don't like these girls that call boys and do that. I would never have done that. And you're like, hey, girl, you were horny.
Downstairs, we're having dinner. And again, this is a scene where they shot everybody else first and Michael J. Fox later. And then we get another life preserver joke. And Dad is fixing the TV. And we have the kid with the coonskin cap that's from the Wonder Years.
Jason Hervey.
Jason Hervey, right.
Now producer here in Hollywood for a while.
And he meets all the kids, including little Joey in the playpen.
Mm-hmm. He cries whenever we take him out of this. We just leave him in there all the time. Like, well, This family has had a long history.
Yeah. What's the comedy? He says to him like quietly, he says, "Get used to those marks."
Get used to these marks, kid.
That's brilliant.
And again, it's just like this is one of those things that is not required for the plot of the movie, but they do such a good job of just like the fun of the time travel jokes. Like, there's a TV. Oh yeah, we've got 2 of them, and you're like, two.
Nobody has
two
has
TVs.
two
And then he's like,
TVs.
oh, I've seen this one, and just the look of especially like Lorraine's dad. He's like, this is a new episode. He's like, no, it's a rerun, and they're just like,
what?
What's a rerun? Like, I mean, just like those, like, it's just like, it's so fun and it's so brilliant. And then meanwhile, you've got mom just getting handsy under the table.
And he asks where the Riverside Drive is, and it ends up, he's like, oh, that's JFK Drive.
Who the hell is John F. Kennedy?
And they ask, maybe we should call your parents. He goes, oh, they're not there. And then it's,
Mother, with Marty's parents out of town, don't you think he ought to spend the night? I mean, after all, Dad almost killed him with the car.
That's true, Marty. I think maybe you should spend the night. I think you're our responsibility.
Well, gee, I don't know.
And he can sleep in my room.
In my room. By the way, I was like, someone is ballsy.
That's what they call thirsty nowadays, kids.
and that hand on the knee under the table, and Marty is out of there.
Yeah.
I gotta go. I gotta go. Thanks very much. It was wonderful. You were all great. See you all later. Much later.
And I love that he gets out and they're like, what a strange boy. And I love Dad's last line.
He's a very strange young man.
He's an idiot. Comes from upbringing. His parents are probably idiots, too. Lorraine, you ever have a kid who acts that way, I'll disown you.
By the way, we missed out on never seeing the grandparents. Like, we've missed out in this movie never seeing Lorraine's parents or George's parents. That would have been an interesting extra scenes to shoot. That might have had
in the Eric Stoltz version. We're gonna get deep into that.
Your son's an idiot.
If Back to the Future was made today, that would be in the world of Back to the Future movies. That would be the spin-off movies.
Yeah, right.
Yes, but right now Marty is heading off to Doc Brown's, and he's going to need his help if he's going to set things right. Unfortunately, unless you have a time machine, you're going to have to wait a whole week to see how things work out, because this is it for part 1 of our exploration of Back to the Future. As always, you can reach us on our Facebook page. Just search for the Cine-Files. You can subscribe to us on iTunes or YouTube. You can support the show by visiting patreon.com/thecine-files. Buy a movie on cinefiles.net. If you want to reach me, you can do it on Twitter at SRMorris, Instagram at SRMorris1. Roca, you can meet at The Roca Says, Michael at MKToon, and Shannon at Shannon_McClung. And after you've followed all of us on our various social media, you can come back in 1 week for part 2 of Back to the Future on the Cine-Files.